If any of our aircraft were in trouble or crews were in trouble, the first aircraft off at Lane had Scott and Rezlaff in it. And they were coming to find out what was going on, to help out, to do whatever was necessary.
And these are the two commanders, Lieutenant Colonel Scott and Rezlaff. What was Rezlaff's rank at the time?
He was a major.
Major.
Major, yes.
So it sounds like you're confirming what I've heard from a number of other veterans who served with the 498th, because by now I've talked with hundreds of Vietnam veterans. But what really strikes me as I talk to vets of the 498th who were there when you were there,
right?
They speak of this unit as having a strong sense of identity, a strong, high morale relative to other units. Given the situation of being in a war zone and dealing with so much horrible stuff, that's the context. But within that context, an experience that was about as positive as it could be in that context. That's the impression I have. Is that right? Does that describe the 498th?
Yeah, yes, it is. You're involved in your career and you've been different places and met different people. There aren't many true leaders out there in the world. There are a lot of administrators, from my perspective, that are supposed to be in leadership positions.
Yes.
But real leaders, you can tell. Now, these two guys and the platoon leaders were real leaders in my estimation, and that made it a whole lot better. As I got back to the States and I was assigned to Fort Rucker and all that, I met a lot of commanders and people that, officers, and some of them were only in it for their own glorification, or they wanted to get promoted and so on and so forth. And that's too bad, because and I want to give all the credit in the world to the ground pounders, the infantry, the Rangers, Marines, the people on the ground, because that was really tough. And we experienced situations where we were shot at, we lost crew members. It was a dangerous job, but the guys on the ground, that was really tough, and I give them a lot of credit, because that could probably cause maybe more problems, I don't know, than being in an aviation unit, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah. So you were saying a minute ago, kind of speaking of the leadership in the 498th, and you said something that I identify with very much, because I've had the same thought many times. You get a lot of people who are in leadership positions because they have done things that have gotten them into leadership positions, but they're not actually leaders. They're managers, they're administrators, but they're not leaders. But then you have others who may be in those kinds of positions, but in addition to having those administrative roles, they actually are leaders as well. What in your mind, drawing on your experience from the 498, what in your mind are the characteristics that set the true leader apart from the person who has the leadership title, but who may actually not be much of a leader? What are some of the characteristic differences?
Well, I think the biggest one is that a leader will do whatever he asks you to do, he or she asks you to do, without hesitation. And I think they also understand that there are limits to everybody's ability, and that common sense has to work into it too, where, they can tell you to take that hill. Well, they know that 90% of the people are going to get killed taking that hill. That's stupid. But a true leader might say, all right, we have this mission, we have to take this hill. How can we do it? And let's do it differently, and let's minimize the casualties. So it's really a matter of, are they willing to do what they want you to do? And will they stand toe to toe with you in the face of adversity too? I think that's it. And again, Colonel Scott saying that he thought we were excellent pilots, we were well trained, and that we had a job to do, and he would back us up 100%. And knowing that, of course, made you feel better. And then knowing that they were monitoring everything that was going on, because in the northern part of South Vietnam, we had one frequency, like 911, so, and we didn't, and a lot of units would change their call frequency from month to month or whatever to try to show the enemy off, so they wouldn't be able to monitor the lines. But dust off had to be one frequency. So when somebody needed us, they didn't have to thumb through a book and find out what the current frequency is. They just called, they had memorized the dust off frequency, and they'd call it in to a operations area, and a dust off would come out. So that's it. I think just common sense and a willingness to do whatever they requested their troops to do.
Sure. And when you say that if one of your helos is shut down in the course of a mission, then the first helo out there is going to be, is it sign 6? Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Scott or Major Rezlaff are going to be out there. So now I was enlisted. I was peacetime Navy enlisted, and one of the stories I heard that impressed me is that Lieutenant Colonel Scott would sometimes go around. The enlisted guys are standing guard on the perimeter, and sometimes he'd go out and just hang out and talk with them. And I was reflecting on that. I mean, nowadays, now I'm in my early 50s now, and I have conversations with 04s and 05s, fairly regularly. But when I was an E3 and a junior enlisted guy, E3, E4, it never would have occurred to me that anybody above 03 would ever have the slightest thing to say to me, let alone take any interest at all in what I was doing. So I was impressed by that. So here I'm just kind of making a comment. I don't know if you have a response to that, but even the thought of an 05, climbing the ladder up into a guard tower to spend time with an E4, that's pretty impressive. I never saw any such thing in my 4 years in the Navy.
Well, I think that reflects on the fact that he was in charge of the whole company, not just the pilots, but everybody enlisted. And if you're on guard duty or if you're in the mess hall or, wherever, he'd probably go around and talk to people and let them know that he knew of them and knew that their job was important, and that he would be there too for them if they needed something or there was a problem.